right. Let's go ahead and get going. Well, good morning. It's good to have you. Summer is coming, is pounding on us. We're in July, so you got kids getting ready to go back to school probably in a few weeks. And so today, what we're going to be talking about is lean project management, eliminating waste, increasing value. And so if you are running any type of project such as Agile or Scrum, you're already being introduced to this idea of lean, because what's happening is we're looking at it from the idea of how can we eliminate waste, how can we increase value, and everything around project management has been driving in the direction of trying to increase value and remove any of the things that we don't need. And so you'll notice that when we talk about this, we talk about more on the Agile side because that seems to embrace this a little bit more. Doesn't mean that traditional can't embrace it, but it seems like Agile has really been driving in that direction. Then PMBOK 7 came out, which embraced this. PMBOK 8 will probably be out later this year, it looks like, and so it'll probably embrace it even more. But the whole idea is how can we just provide what the customer needs and make sure that it's bringing value to that customer. And so that's what we're hoping for. So let's look at a couple of things today. First off, the lean overview. Most of you are familiar with this. Lean, when we start talking about this, it actually has its roots over in manufacturing. And many of you already know this, but it has its roots in a manufacturing level of how to be able to make a manufacturing plant more efficient, more effective, looking at the processes. And then what happened is people started realizing that this would help us in running our projects. So the lean principle overview would be maximizing value. Lean principles aim to maximize value by reducing waste, focusing on what matters most to the customer. Now, one of the reasons why I think this hits such a connection with project management is because in traditional, we deal with this thing of scope creep. If we're trying to increase value, sometimes that feeds us into that scope creep area that drives us all crazy as well. So we find ourselves trying to back out of it, but the customer doesn't feel like they're getting value. It also connects us with that continuous improvement, and it's a core element of lean principles, encouraging constant evaluation, enhancement of processes. And of course, continuous improvement, as you already know, is something that even PMI has actually emphasized even more with PMBOK 7 and also with the new PMP test that came out in 2022. The continuous improvement is even a bigger piece of all of that than what it has been in the past. And so that's exactly one of the reasons why lean, I think, has taken off in such a powerful mode. Also, the tools that are used. Now, these are just a listing of some to give you some examples. There's a whole slate of them, but you're looking at the 5S, the Kaizen, the value stream mapping to improve productivity, quality. The list goes on and on. For those of you who spend a lot of time in lean, you have different tools for different outputs. And then future integration. Lean principles are expected to integrate advanced technologies like AI and IoT to optimize process further. Now, what we're talking about is we look at AI, all of us are having to consider what's going to happen with artificial intelligence. How are we going to implement it within our organization? Also, many of you will be working on artificial intelligence projects. That artificial intelligence will be a tool that will probably be integrated into your project and the tool base that you're using right now. So all of that will be something that will have to be there. So let's talk about some of the principles. Defining lean. So lean thinking is part of both agile and traditional waterfall projects. It goes back to the Toyota production system. And that's why I made the statement I did, that it goes all the way back to manufacturing. And so what you were looking for back at Toyota was efficiency and customer value. What is going to bring value to that customer and what is efficient? What makes sense? How does this help the process? So it became the main goals in lean for Toyota, but then you started seeing how this could be the main goals of what we do over in the project. What's going to bring value to the customer, and does this make sense? Lean PM and traditional PM are different in that lean PM focuses on the value brought to the customer. And that's the reason why Agile is constantly delivering value to the customer. Your product owner is constantly re-ranking all the features or user stories or story points, and you're looking at what's going to bring the most value to that customer at a given time in the project. So you can see how Lean aligns with that. Traditional PM focuses on completing a task for the customer, and we're running it based on a schedule. So the customer might not be getting the highest value at all times compared to on the Agile side or the Scrum side, they're typically getting something that's of great value, because you're normally going from a ranking order from the highest value to the lowest value. So you can see with that why lean would be such a strong asset. Comparing lean PM and traditional. So traditional and lean focus, let's look at a couple of pieces of this. So traditional PM emphasizes predictive planning, rigid timelines, comprehensive documentation. Traditional models may wait until project closure to really measure success. And this has always been one of the negatives that we talk about in almost any of our meetings about traditional is you might not know what you've got until the end. So if you're wrong, you don't know you're wrong until the end. That's the bad thing. When we talk about Scrum or Agile, the reason why we have a tendency to like any of those is because it allows us, if we're wrong, we know sooner. We know earlier because the customer is getting something in a sprint or an iteration every so often. Lean takes more flexible, value-driven approaches, emphasizing flow, emphasizing the iteration. Lean fosters a transparency, a team environment, moving away from top-down control. And lean principles strategically, either as a whole or as a hybrid model, enhance agility without sacrificing control. Now, the reason why this is an important piece is because all of us are needing some amount of agility. And that's the reason why many of you are running hybrid projects where just even a handful of years ago, 7 years ago, you had a tendency to be probably all waterfall, or you had a tendency to be all agile in some component. Now you're starting to realize I need a hybrid here. We've got to start it pretty traditional, but we're going to run the middle of it more in a agile manner. So that causes us to have to think differently. All of this that we're talking about feeds us into that idea of tailoring. And so PMI talked about and introduced this idea of tailoring back in PMBOK 6. They really emphasized it in PMBOK 7 of tailoring the processes to make sense for your project. And that has helped us in being able to get away from that crazy mindset that we were supposed to use all of the PMBOK to run our projects. And I can remember years ago in PMBOK 4, somebody said, we're using all of these. And I said, sure, no, we're not using all of those. And he said, well, PMBOK says we're supposed to use all of those. And I said, you would spend more time with documentation than you would finishing your project. So no, it's supposed to be tailored. Well, today, the PMBOK 7 really emphasizes that tailoring to where you're customizing. What makes sense to your project? And so that's exactly why lean would be a piece of that. Lean versus traditional project management. You've got several core focuses of the approach to planning. Lean is looking at iterative, which is going to be more agile or at least hybrid. The project flow, the emphasis is on continuous flow or pull systems. Now, if you're not as familiar with a pull system, Agile and Scrum have gone to have that as an option for people to be able to pull the work rather than being assigned the work. And so this is looking at a much higher functioning Agile or Scrum team than what maybe you and I have worked with maybe in the past. But as people grow, they're pulling or they're asking for work for them to work on so that it can benefit their skills or expand their skills. Waste management, actively identify, remove non-value added incentives. And so what you're looking at there with waste management on the project side is we're not providing a bunch of extra stuff. Whatever the customer wants, we're providing, but we're not providing all the extra bells and whistles. Team structure. On the traditional side, notice it's very siloed, very functional, and we've all had to deal with those kind of things. On the team side, when you're talking about Scrum, or at least on the hybrid piece for lean project management, it's very cross-functional. And as you know, cross-functional is a term that is being utilized almost simultaneously with a self-organizing team, which is very high functioning. They make a lot of their own decisions. When you talk about change management on the lean side, that welcomes change because you want the change so that you're providing something of higher quality and higher value to the customer. Also, change is often discouraged, though, on the traditional side, because that's why we've got command and control in place, is so that we have everything signed off. And of course, documentation is minimal in lean, not that you don't have it, but you don't have as much. Metrics are used, but you're looking at lead time, flow time, cycle time, and then problem solving. You're using root causes to be able to satisfy and solve the problem, rather than having someone else, and typically the team solving the problem. And then tools and techniques. We go into just in time, which is one of the, which comes from a manufacturing standpoint as well, where your products start showing up that you need for your project just in time for you to be able to use them. And so a lot of times when you're looking at this keeps us from having to have a big space for storage and all these other things. Now, as you look at lean, you can see why people use lean more so with Agile than they would others. All right, so let's talk about waste in projects. Sometimes people think, well, we don't have waste. And I smile, and you do too, because you know we've got waste. We've spent a lot of time working on some of this stuff that the customer is not going to use, and in many cases is not really going to bring value to them. It's a bell and a whistle that they think they want, but it's not going to really do much. So enhanced strategic alignment. Let's start at the top. Every project, whether we are using it for our agile or traditional, should be aligning with our strategic plan and goals. Now, if you've ever worked on that pet project that somebody brought in because they had extra money, I'm sure that hadn't happened to you, but if it has, you know what I'm talking about. You're not real sure how this thing connects. So that's one of the pieces that you're wanting to emphasize is, does this drive a strategic component, strategic plan, strategic objective, accelerated time to value? So how are we being able to do something in a realistic amount of time that's bringing value to the customer? Increasing predictability and flow efficiency. So are we, over time, and this takes a little bit of time, are we being able to predict when the customer is going to receive something? If you've worked with some of the vendors, from time to time, vendors will tell you they're doing Agile or they're doing Scrum, and they don't know when the project will be finished. And we all know that you can't get by with that, because you've got to at least come up with a velocity of how fast you're getting some of this material or some of these products to the customer. But yet that seems to be still out here, to where people will say, well, I'm doing Agile or I'm doing Scrum, and I don't know when it'll be finished. Well, that's not going to get by. We're going to have some kind of predictability. It might be a range, but we still got to predict. Improved cross-functional collaboration, evaluated quality, and fewer defects. All of these would be looked at as waste. Anything we're having to redo would be looked at as waste for us. Optimize use of human capital. If you've ever seen some of your most important people or your best people being used on some little Mickey Mouse nothing kind of thing, that's very frustrating, because you think of what that person brings to the table, but we've got other people who could do some of the smaller things. Stronger culture of continuous improvement. Are we thinking how to improve? Are we thinking how to be better? Leaner governance and decision making. So in other words, are we running Agile and Scrum, but I still have to have 5 sign-offs in order to be able to go to the next iteration? All of that gets kind of crazy, because if we're wanting speed, then we've got to be able to streamline this so that we can have speed. 5 sign-offs is not going to be streamlining it. Better use of technology, better use of automation, competitive advantage, scalability. Are we able to adjust the process? Are we able to adjust this to what the customer wants, but also to make sense for our organization? Those of you who are in high regulatory situations, such as some of you that are on here in power plants and stuff, your scalability is going to be different than someone else's. And the main reason for this is going to be because you've got certain type of stipulations you've got to follow. So you're looking at that. And then the competitive piece, how can we be competitive? And can we continue to be competitive with what we're trying to do? And so you're trying to make sure that obviously you're being beneficial to your customer, but that your customer looks at you at you're helping them be competitive with different things. So let's talk about eliminating waste with Lean. So you identify and remove waste. And so it can mean a lot of different things. It's bugs, it's defects, it's rework, all those type of things. But you're focusing on identifying and removing non-value added activities to streamline processes and enhance efficiency. One of the biggest wastes that we all see is waiting. Oh my goodness, I don't know how you are, but it just poked me in the eye. It drives me nuts to have to wait. And the older I have gotten, you think that you calm down as you get older. I don't know that that's true for me. I've gotten to where it's like, oh my gosh, there is a line. You've got to be kidding me. And so all of those things punch my buttons. But we do. Anytime we've got waiting, that's looked at as waste. And so, and that's part of what all of us do. We're looking at how to be more efficient. And so, of course, if you're waiting in a line and you're looking and seeing inefficiencies right there, as many project people do, you're sitting here looking in the line, you're thinking, I've stood here 7 minutes. I can tell you 9 ways how to make this process better just from standing in line. And that's one of the things that we deal with, is how do you identify some of that waste? The other piece is going to be improving the workflow, enhancing the efficiency, the effectiveness of processes by optimizing the workflow, removing bottlenecks. Is there a bottleneck someplace? Let's go back to the signatures. If we've got to have 5 signatures, I bet you look at those signatures, you're going to find a bottleneck around some of those signatures. If you're waiting to batch something before we can move on to something else, I bet you're going to find some inefficiencies. Not that there might not be reasons for some of these. Obviously, there could be, but I'm saying, do I have to have 5? Do we have to have, one client years ago, they had 13 signatures through the process. Do you really think that those 13 signatures made that much difference? Could 3 signatures have not gotten the same output and sped that process up? So just some things for us to just think about with some of this. Use lean tools, apply tools like value stream mapping, 5S, Kaizen, continuous improvement, waste reduction. We're always looking at all of those types of things. But what you're trying to do is to be able to get more, obviously, for less, but you're also wanting to not cut quality. And that's always the sounding board for some of this, is that we speed things up, but we cut quality? Right now, everybody is kind of hammering this thing. If you've watched the news in the last few days, you know that TSA is looking at whether or not to change the rules to where you can leave your shoes on and where you can carry on bigger bottles of different things rather than the 3-ounce limit. And of course, the problem with that is now, as people have kind of been pre-programmed, we all have, that 3 ounces or less is not, is less risky, and for them to scan your shoes is less risky when you're flying. And so all of that will come out. But when they're talking about continuous improvement, will that make a difference on flow? Well, of course it will. You're not taking your shoes off. I'm not taking my shoes off. We're not sitting there on the corner putting our shoes back on as it gets scanned. That's a piece of an article that's not going to be scanned. So that's process improvement. But are we minimizing quality? And that's the question yet to be examined. Are we minimizing the quality and safety of that airplane ride with that? And then increase productivity by reducing waste, improving processes. Lean methodologies help increase productivity, deliver higher quality outcomes. And part of that higher quality is speed. Many of you know that I shared this a few months ago. We hired a guy to paint our deck, and he was one of the best painters I've ever seen. But it took him forever to paint my deck. And it finally came down to the point where I thought Wanda was going to take him out. I mean, it was just, we could not get him. He'd come to work at noon, go home at 3. I mean, I didn't realize a painter could have such a gushy life, So anyway, it took him months. We hired him in October, thought we were going to have it done in October. I finally got it done in May of this year, okay? And so best painter I've ever seen. I would never hire him again, though, because I don't need my best painter I've ever had. I need a good enough painter to paint my deck so that I can use my deck. And see, that's that level of quality. Do I need the best painter? He was awesome. But I did not want to sacrifice time of my deck and all my junk on my deck in my garage for all these months. And that's what you're having to do. How much quality do I want? A good enough painter would have been good enough on my deck to be able to allow me to use my deck 3 or 4 months earlier. And that's what you're doing on your job. Do I need the best whatever this is? Maybe not. Good enough might do it. So when you're identifying main waste, a lean-focused audience expects and mention of 7 basic classic types of waste. And all of you that are in the Lean Six Sigma world, you live this every day. So transportation, inventory, motion, waiting, overproduction, overprocessing, defects, skills, underutilized talent, often added as an 8th. And so we look at all of these different pieces here. And so we start looking at, where is the waste? The waste is not just defects and bugs, even though that would be that too. It could be other things that we do. But talent is really starting to be a bigger piece here, because we are now working with the most educated workforce of all time. And so millennials are coming in with the most education of any workforce ever before. We have more degrees in the workplace today through millennials, 77 million millennials, than we ever have any other time. We also are working with the most comfortable workplace for technology. Millennials don't know anything different than technology. They've had it the whole time. Those two change the whole dynamics of the workplace. And so a lot of times we underutilize some of these folks who really do have a lot of skills, but we only use a portion of those skills. And that would be considered waste with our people. Transportation, unnecessary movement of project information, materials, deliverables between people or teams that don't add value. So we're moving all this junk around and it's just sucking down time to get it to another group to be able to look at it. Inventory, we've talked about with just-in-time work or deliverables completed but not yet used or delivered, leading to delays or potential rework because once again we're warehousing some of this stuff. Motion, excess movement by team members or systems within a process adds no value. When we look at emotion and we look at processes, many of you have been doing process redesign for years, and a lot of those of you on the software side, if you come in with new software and new technology, a lot of times that will change the processes because there's certain things you don't need to do. But sometimes we look at our processes like it's the holy grail from God, and we cannot change that. And yet those processes were put into place by somebody even before we got there. So we're trying desperately to get it more streamlined. Waiting idle time when people are tasked or delayed by dependencies, approvals, or resource availability. Overproduction, doing more than's needed or producing deliverables too early. So what happens when we think about overproduction? This is a tendency for a lot of us to do this because once again, we're trying to make sure that we've done the right thing. I just think of something simple in writing curriculum and doing face-to-face seminars for all these years. We would always take extra material in case we didn't have the right material for somebody or in case they stuck somebody else in that class. And I just think of all the notebooks that were wasted because of overproduction, overprocessing, putting more effort into the task than the customer requires. This is what I'm referring to with sign-offs and watching some of these things. The customer wasn't requiring it, but we put it in. We feel more comfortable. And that might have been something that would hurt us in the process flow or in timing to be able to do some of these. Defects, obviously, errors or mistakes in deliverables that require correction, leading to rework, time loss. Skills, underutilized talent, failing to use people's full capabilities, or assigning highly skilled team members to low value tasks. And so where are your best people? Your best people should be doing your highest visible stuff, your best stuff. And then doesn't mean your other people are not good. You're raising them up. You're educating them. You're equipping them. You're coaching them. Over time, they're gonna have more and more skills, but they can make a huge difference here. All right, so let's talk a little more about implementation of Lean. Lean is more than a process. It's a mindset. What is the least amount we can do and reach these type of requirements? And so Lean, you're looking at establishing Lean readiness, and leadership commitment, gain executive buy-in, educate stakeholders or Lean principles, define the Lean value system, identify the customer value, define the value streams. You map out the current processes, you identify waste, and create a value stream map and analyze for waste. You design the future state process, which is you're streamlining the workflow and introducing a Lean mindset or a Lean process. And so what you're looking at is how can we make it better? So let's give you an example of this. So you're being asked to work on an artificial intelligence project for your organization. Artificial intelligence is going to change the way we think, the way our processes flow. It will not change everything, but it will change some of this. And so that means that if I go in with an old mindset of AI is just a tool over here, and I'm really wanting to limit that tool on what it does, then I'm not going to get the full value of it. However, I don't want the thing so wide open here that it's actually messing us up or it's causing a security breach of something. And so you really are trying to put it in the right type of box that your organization wants it to be. But it is going to change how we look at things. It's going to change our processes. It's going to change all of those types of thoughts that we have with it. So what's a workflow? Workflow is a sequence of tasks that depicts a process. And so all of us know what this is. We do this all the time, every day. I know you're working with these kind of things. And so you're looking at the processes. But when you look at that process, first off, are we following the process? Surprisingly, many organizations are not. We've changed the process, but the process is still documented the old way. But secondly, how many sign-offs does this process have? How many times do you see waiting time in that process? Those are some things that are going to make a difference on it. Also, identifying the workflow, begin mapping the process out with Post-it notes. Think of how many times everybody on these calls have done that in real life. We start mapping it out with a Post-it note because we're moving it around to make sure we've got the right sequence. Gathering input from team members who do the work. Walk through each step from the beginning until the end, and then list each decision with a diamond and task with a rectangle box. And so as you start walking through this, you start realizing we do certain things that maybe aren't even on the process. Now, that might be on purpose that we're doing that because we didn't change the process, but we have added and updated it, but we never updated it in the documents. Or in the operating procedures. But the point I'm getting at is, are we following the process, and is this the best process for us? There might be a better process. Let me give you an example of one that we're all seeing right now. One of the things that you like, many of you like Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A changed the whole mindset of the process of how they service people. So if you've been to a Chick-fil-A and you go through double lines and they've got people out there with their tablets helping take orders. And so they've got their process in style and in line, and people feel like they're getting value, even though they're paying actually a premium for that chicken. They're getting value because of the process of how they're getting and how fast they're getting it. However, there are other companies that have actually taken that same concept. We've got two coffee companies here in Springfield that could be a Chick-fil-A. Everything they're doing on the outside looks like Chick-fil-A. What does that mean? They learn from their processes. They've got their people out there. They've got double lines going through. And so they're doing everything from a process standpoint like Chick-fil-A, and they're doing very well as a coffee company. But so, it's not a Chick-fil-A, but they've learned from Chick-fil-A, from identifying the workflow. Also, creating a visual of the process. That's huge. What are the steps we go through? Validate the workflow with stakeholders. Look for waste of waiting time, duplication. Does this add value, or is it busy work? Or where can this process be sped up? When writing a couple of graduate courses for Liberty University a few years ago, when I was writing it for them, one of the things that I kept asking myself is, every assignment I wanted to build on something that's going to make a difference for that student and for what they're doing. I don't want it to just be an assignment that they have to turn in. I don't want busy work. And so that made a huge difference. And so then when I was pitching that course to them for Agile, I've got an Agile course and an Agile Teams course at graduate level that I teach for them. But when I was pitching it, that was the direction I wanted to do. I wanted it to be something that was going to impact the student, not be busy work. Busy work is waste to me. That's just wasted time. And that's what we see so many times. So the process for discovering the workflow of tasks, defining the scope of the purpose, gathering information, identifying and list all tasks, mapping the flow. Visually, the visual is huge because some people will see something visually that they don't see in real life once you mark it out. And then validating the workflow, identifying waste and improvement opportunities, and then documenting and standardizing the workflow. The improvement opportunities are huge. They make a huge difference for us to be able to look and see, is it possible to make this adjustment? AI will make some of those adjustments. Some of the things that's taking some time right now, it will do in seconds. And then we'll still do most of the other part of the process, but maybe not those things. Let's look at challenges in identifying the workflow. Inadequate standardization of workflow processes, resistance to change and cultural barriers, insufficient integration of technology and tools, deficient training and skill development. Our training and skill development is going to go through a huge adjustment here. Just with AI, AI is going to become a personal trainer for every one of us, whether we want it to or not. Because you're going to have at your fingertips, if you're already playing with it, I'm telling the truth on this, you have at your fingertips everything you want to know about almost anything by asking it the right prompt and asking it to teach you. And one of the little tools that we've played around with in teaching AI to people is put in there not just to teach you about Lean, but put in there to teach you about Lean as if you were a 7th grader. And that way it connects to us. It's something that makes sense to us. It's very low. And so I've gotten to where I write that. And of course, my clients will start laughing because I'll say, teach it to us like a 7th grader. But it's amazing how that 7th grade level is about right, and we start reading it because that's at that level to where you can read it, you can take it in, and you're thinking, man, I understand it. Because why? I'm going to use the term in a respectful manner. We dumb it down to where we get it, at a 7th grade level. But if I wrote it at a graduate level, first off, the wording would be different and we would just miss it because once again, that's not the level we read all the time. So I do that too. When I'm trying to learn something or get refreshed on something, explain it to me as if I'm a 7th grader, and I'll have ChatGPT or I'll have Claude or something explain it to me from that aspect so I can hear it and get it. Okay, so let's go a little further. Inadequate standardization of workflow processes, absence of uniform process definitions. Believe it or not, there are many people who don't use the process. They do their own process. So, absence of uniform process definition. The team interprets processes differently, or different processes create misinterpretation. And then flat out, people don't follow the process. They do their own thing. The process is an important piece in the average organization. Now, if you don't have any processes, then you're starting them or you're creating them. And so, you're testing one or two different processes to try to decide which it's going to be. But you have variability in process execution. It can come from team structure, organizational culture, inconsistencies in leadership. All of these can make a difference. But the important thing is that you've got a process that you're following. And that process, is it as streamlined as it possibly can be? And the better it is, the more time and savings it's going to be. Limited documentation. Now, if you're on the traditional side, you swear by documentation because we use documentation to save our buns in case something happens. And nothing wrong with that, okay? But on the Agile side, there's still documentation. I know a lot of times people say we don't document, we're using Agile or Scrum, but that's really not true. There's the right amount of documentation is really what it is. And so a lack of documentation can make it hard to analyze because we don't really know what people did. And a lot of lean is analysis. And so lack of documentation, lack of knowledge sharing reduces team maturity. Knowledge sharing is a big driver with AI. PMBOK 7 has probably made a lot more changes on the knowledge, transfer of knowledge than most of these other areas. I think you're going to see a bigger impact on PMBOK 8 as it comes out, because once again, with that knowledge sharing from us as a project team to the customer, us as a mature team member to other team members, that knowledge sharing needs to be much more transparent and fluid than what we have. Sometimes we're holding it too close, thinking, well, I know my stuff and I wish you knew it, but I'm not telling you anything. And that's the opposite of what we should be doing. I should be sharing it with my team. And then results in lack of enhancements, lack of effectiveness in the organization. So that inadequate standardization, and there are some things that have to be fluid. I get it. But should there be, and do we do things in a standard way that can be standard and save time? And the answer is yes, it can be. Do you have a certain way that projects come into the pipeline? Do you have certain things when it's crisis time? Because that's going to make a difference. And so all of those can fit some type of standardization. Now, resistance to change and change solutions. Change can include piloting to learn the culture and potential challenges. Consider using Kotter's change model. If you're not familiar with Kotter's change model, just Google it or put it in ChatGPT. Kotter is a Harvard professor. He's written a few books and a lot of articles on change. He's one of the most clear-cut people on change. Even though it's not perfect, I like him, and he's gotten a lot of playtime because his change model makes sense. But Kotter's change model is a great change model to be able to help us make changes in an organization. And then the ADKAR model, if you're not familiar with it, it connects that lean transformation there. And so ADKAR is used a lot of times in marketing projects, if any of you are doing that, but it's also used in just making changes to an organization. So ADKAR stands for there's an awareness, a desire, a knowledge, an ability, and a reinforcement. ADKAR has been around for a while. It's a mainline change theory. And the reason why we're going back to mainline change theories, and if you're not catching it, is because projects are now starting to drive mainline changes in an organization. And so when we have the newest technology come in, we're driving change. When we have new revenue come in or new opportunities come in, and as you look at AI is both. AI is going to be the new opportunity and the new technology. So it's definitely going to be something that's going to be changing how we do everything about the organization. Everything about AI is the same stuff that we went through in 97, 98 when we started looking at internet coming into the workplace. People were thinking, well, how are we going to use this? Well, I don't even know why we would need that at all. Now think about those kind of statements today. With us, we're doing this around the world right now with people tapping in just virtually. And if somebody took your internet away, oh my gosh, everything shuts down for us because that's how we communicate. But that's exactly the big step that we're going to see with AI. With all of this. Okay, so let's go on into resistance to change and cultural barriers. Organizational inertia, resistance to lean adoption, lack of education on lean principles, misalignment between organizational culture and lean principles, lean methodologies, focus on continuous improvement, waste reduction, empowering employees, a lack of leadership support, no direction, and don't share the vision. So when you look at some of these components here of why people are, what are some resistant areas for changing the culture, a lot of times we think, well, I'm not trying to change the culture, I'm just doing a project. But however, many of our projects change the culture because you're putting in new technology. You might be changing the process, which is changing the culture. And so we have to look at it through those new eyes when we glance at all of these things. Insufficient integration of technology and tools. So inadequate workflow mapping tools. So we've got value mapping tools, process flow diagrams are essential for visualizing workflows. Limited adoption of digital technology such as software for project management or data analytics or automation. Challenges in data collection, data management processes, current data capabilities. So when you start looking at insufficient integration of technology, this hurts us a little bit because once again, your technology and software and all of these things speed some of these things up. And so we've got to make sure that it fits our values and our regulation, but it does benefit us in a lot of different ways. But the challenge is sometimes we look at these as fearful because it's new technology and I don't know it, then I'm fearful of it. Or because it's a technology that might change how we do job, well, I'm fearful of it. It's not like we're going to bypass this. I mean, this technology, if it's really driving and creating new opportunities, we're going to be faced to deal with it. And so why would we want to be on the back end of it? And we want to be on the front end to where we learn it as we go through, as it's evolving, so we know what it does and also what it doesn't do. You're going to be in the best position for understanding that challenge. Deficient training skill development. This is huge. Recently, I heard of a company that let 46 people of their IT department go because they do not have the right skills. And they can apply for those jobs down the road after they've picked up those right skills. And I think you're going to start seeing people make those kind of decisions all over the world, because what's happened is we did not reskill. We didn't do it personally, and many of our companies didn't do it. And so now we're coming into a place to where, okay, what kind of skills does that person have who works for us right now? If they don't have the right skills, typically an organization will reskill them. However, this organization fired them. And that's just kind of a drastic thing. But that just happened this year. And I just thought, oh my gosh, what if you see that happening all the way through? So lack of comprehensive lean training programs, no training on lean principles, inconsistent lean principles or inconsistent usage of lean. And so it wasn't just lean that they fired them over. It was that they didn't have the newest technology skills. They didn't keep themselves up. And so that just kind of tells us, regardless of what position we're in, we should be keeping ourselves trained and up with new skills, even if it's something that we're not using. Do I have an awareness to that? Have I seen that? So discuss and measure lean tools to optimize the process. As you use lean tools for project management, it goes back to measuring different things. You want to measure stuff that's important. Sometimes we measure stupid stuff. We measure stuff that sucks down a lot of time, but we're not getting any value out of it. And so anything we're going to measure, we want to make sure it's going to bring some kind of value. And so time tools and those type of things do make a difference. Are there certain amount of time we can finish something or get something to a customer? All of that will make a difference. So defining customer value. So remember that value is always in the eyes of the customer. A lot of times we think it's in our eyes and we know more than the customer, but truthfully, the customer is doing it. So in lean, value is defined by the customer. It focuses on what they're willing to pay based on their priorities. It includes product features, service quality, timeliness, cost effectiveness. By defining value first, the team ensures that every step in the process contributes directly to the outcomes that matter to the customer. Speed does matter to the customer. Cost does matter to the customer. But we've all been in those situations to where something changed and all of a sudden we were not as concerned about cost as we were speed. Or we were not as concerned about speed as we were cost. And so all of that is some of the pressures that we get into with project management. And so speed does matter and cost does matter. All of them matter up front and it feels equal. But as you go in that project, we've all been pressed with certain things to where people are watching the money heavier or they're watching the time heavier on some of them. How do you define customer value, though, in projects? So engage the stakeholders. You're going to be talking to the customer, obviously. If you're doing Agile or Scrum, the customer and the product owner are talking constantly, and that customer is constantly redefining what is the value to them. The product owner is constantly re-ranking the user stories that the team should be working on. But you can do a lot of things. Stakeholder interviews, voice of the customer. That means making sure you understand the customer's position, clear requirements, establishing value-driven goals, using journey mapping. All of these types of things help you understand the heartbeat of that customer. And you've got to be able to eat, drink, and understand what that customer thinks is the most important. If you're working with a business analyst, the business analyst, thankfully, is doing a lot of this for you. If you're working with a product owner is doing a lot of this for you. So it depends on the roles that your organization has. But both of those would be working with that customer real tight like that. Let's talk about some of the metrics. Just because I can measure it doesn't mean that I have to, and it might not bring any value to the customer. So lean metrics are performance metrics, measurements used in lean management to track value, efficiency, effectiveness, continuous improvement. So 6 typical tools are used in lean project metrics. And so the tools conduct a different and precise measurement, but it might not be of value to you. So just because they have a metric doesn't mean that you have to use it. One of the most common, though, is lean metric is cycle time. Definition, it's the time it takes to complete one unit of work from start to finish, excluding waiting time. And so the purpose is the metric assesses how long each process step takes, helps optimize flow. The formula, you have work completion time minus the work start time. I don't know how you are on cycle time, but I don't care what I'm doing. I want to have a general idea of how long does this take. Almost anything I do, I'll ask, how long does this generally take? If you've ever been to the doctor and they tell you to come in for a test, I ask how long this test is going to take because I want to know how long I'm waiting, what the component is. So cycle time, lean metric of cycle time. The second is going to be lead time. Definition of the time it takes from a moment a customer makes a request to the moment it is delivered. The purpose, it measures the speed at which value is delivered to the customer. The formula would be the order delivery date compared to the order request date. And so this lead time that you're looking at here, the time it takes from the moment a customer requests it to the moment delivered. And then you see that a lot of times with just having people work on your house or work on something. In other words, it's only going to, they're going to be able to do a great job, but you can't get them in there for 6 months. Think of how many times we've seen that with programmers. The programmer is only going to take them 20 minutes to do the fix that you have, but you're not going to see them for 6 weeks because they're so swamped with everything else. So we see that in a lot of them. Next one's called flow efficiency. The ratio of active work time to total lead time. It measures the percentage of time spent actively working on a task versus the total time it takes to complete the task. Low flow efficiency indicates excessive waiting, delays, or interruptions. So that's when you're looking for the flow. If you're looking at the flow and you're seeing a lot of waiting time, some of that waiting time might make sense. Obviously, if we're pouring concrete, we're having to wait for that concrete to harden for a certain amount of time. That makes sense. But you might have waiting time that it doesn't make any sense for it to be waiting. And so can I cut that out and speed that up? And so this would be the value added time times 100 over total lead time. And so these are some of the formulas that you've been exposed to. An example of this would be a feature took 2 days of active work, but sat idle for 8 days. And so you think of how many projects this has happened to all of us. You can't get the person free to work on it for 2 weeks. So you're looking at flow efficiency. Also, lean metric for throughput. Definition, the number of units produced or processed in a given period of time. Measures of the efficiency of the production system. So you've got total units completed divided by the time period. This is what you're looking at a lot of times with velocity, even over on when you're looking at Agile or Scrum. What's the number of features or user stories I can get to the customer in a 3-week sprint? And after you've done 3 of these, you now start coming up with that average for that velocity. Okay, I can get 22 features to that customer every 3 weeks. And so you start making projections then of when that project going to be finished. The lean metrics, work in progress. WIP, if you're not familiar with this phrase, this is a phrase that really has been magnified in Agile and Scrum, and so work in progress. And so the mindset, though, about it is a little different than what we might think. And so what you're looking at with work in progress is how many different types of things do we have in the pipeline coming down to us that we're supposed to be working on. And so the number of units currently being processed in the system. And if we're looking at it from a project standpoint, I'm working on 5 projects, but I've got 6 more right behind it. But let me describe what I think is happening with many of you. You've got 7 more behind that, and you're going to meetings on all those different levels there of the ones you're working on, the ones that are in the pipeline right behind it, and goodness gracious, those that are way back in the pipeline to get it into the funding pipeline. So you're being met to death with these work in progress. On the Agile and Scrum side, they have really leaned heavy on minimizing the work in progress so that you're not working on all that backlog of stuff trying to get it into the pipeline, but you're working on the most important at all times. I love that philosophy, but we don't have enough people to do it that way, because you're running on a skeleton crew. And I'm just making that assumption. If you're like most of my customers, you're running on a skeleton crew. And so if you're going to have those projects ready that are way back in the pipeline, you're going to those meetings to make the, to give the estimates and to give the benefits of that project. But the work in progress, the principle behind this is a good one. I'm only working on the most important project till we get it out the door, and then we work on the next most important. I love that. But that's not the reality that we have, because once again, we don't have enough people. So it indicates process bottlenecks, helps in limited overproduction. Idea state could be minimize the work in progress to maintain the flow and reduce waste. Love it. But we've got to have more people to really be able to pull some of this off. Lean metric, the takt time, the maximum amount of time to produce a product to meet customer demand. It aligns production with customer demand. So you have the available production time divided by the customer demand. And this is one that makes a huge difference in the manufacturing side for product development. So you'll notice a lot of these things with Lean, it's based on that product development. So that's why it aligns so well with Agile, because you're producing products, you're producing product features to that customer so that they get those values they want. And then Agile Lean integration for adaptive project value. So Agile and Lean complement each other, reducing waste, high responsiveness to the customer, providing value faster, maximizing the workflow. Now, if you're still off a little bit on this providing value faster, what it means is if I'm doing a project for you, I'm getting you a piece of that project to start playing with early. So within 3 weeks, you're playing with some of those features. And you and your team are not just, you're not in a cocoon over here. You're talking to the team saying, wow, this really looks good. This isn't even close to what we want. And so you've got that feedback coming back and forth. And then another 3 weeks, you get another iteration of it for you and your team. So if we are wrong, we're wrong earlier. We're wrong earlier. So that's one of the reasons why this is so anchored in such a good place for it right here. Okay, Agile and Lean tools and techniques. So Agile release planning and Lean value stream mapping are very much connected. So when we talk about Agile release planning, what we mean is there's so many sprints that are going to be under the umbrella of a release, just like it is on the traditional side. So many phases would be under the umbrella of a release over on the traditional side. Definition of done, you're familiar with that. DoD includes Lean values, because this is the customer describing what features they have to have in order for this product to be at full functionality for them. Continuous customer feedback loops that they're talking. And then managing value delivery rather than activity tracking. Now, the reason why this isn't a us against them kind of thing. This isn't Agile against traditional. It's just different. And the project is going to make the difference. If we can ever get it in our mind, there are projects that we absolutely want to run in a traditional manner. If you're building a building for somebody, it's going to run in traditional. It's going to run into initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. Why? Because it's a typical standard project. And so you have a certain sequence it has to go. But when you're talking about those creative type of projects that we get into, such as Agile and Scrum, then you're looking at how can we produce these and put that creativity there. So that means that it's not going to run just real fluid in all of those pieces. All right, let's go to these last few. Increasing project value by improving efficiency. So increasing the project value. Let me give you an example. Just happened yesterday. So we had storm come through here, and I'm in Springfield, Missouri, and so we had storm and rain and winds come through yesterday. So I've got a tree that has been over my shed. I've got a shed that I've got feed for the deer and for the deer and the turkeys and stuff that we feed illegally. And so anyway, we've got all this feed out here that I put out here just so I can watch turkeys and deer outside of my yard. And so the tree got blown down and crushed my shed yesterday. Okay, so yesterday. So I called my insurance company, who had me call the claims department, who talked to me within the hour, who then turned around and sent me an email. And so all of that was taken care of, and it hasn't even been 24 hours. And I've already now got somebody programmed to come out tomorrow morning to be able to tell me what the insurance is going to pay on my shed. Now, I tell you that, maybe your insurance company is that great. I typically have not had that kind of service from an insurance company. It took days and weeks to get somebody to get it all the paperwork in, but also to get somebody scheduled to come out and to look at it as an appraiser to say, hey, this is what kind of check you'll get. And so Wanda and I were talking about it because this is a new insurance that we've got, and our thing was, oh my gosh, look at how efficient they were, and they use technology for so much of it. And so tomorrow morning between 8 and noon, I've got an appraiser coming out to look at the shed that just got crushed yesterday, and I'm just amazed. And so did that bring value to me? Yes, because my thought was it's going to take me forever to get Bubba out here to measure that thing and tell me how much money that they're not going to send me. You're already anticipating all these problems. All right, so let's go on. So value by improving efficiency. So they were very efficient, and that brought value to me and made me think, hey, this is a great insurance company. Now, we'll see how the rest of the experience goes. So it's a strategic way to enhance profitability, stakeholder satisfaction, competitive advantage, reducing costs, faster delivery, higher quality output, improved resource utilization. All of this insurance company has done so far, because my expectation was typical insurance company, I'm going to have trouble. We'll see what happens tomorrow, how the rest of this goes. And if it does, then they've been very efficient in how they've been able to take care of this claim. All right, so increase project value by reducing costs. So how can we reduce the cost? Efficiencies do typically reduce the cost. It leads to lower costs by minimizing waste, such as time, materials, and labor, automating repetitive tasks, such as using software, and then optimizing resource allocation, such as right people on the right task. If you look at what you're doing here, and let me go back to the insurance company, the technology, the lady I talked with said, do you mind taking some digital pictures of the tree that has fallen on your shed? And when you, and I'm going to send you a link, upload those pictures. And so those pictures went in within an hour of it being on the shed. And then those pictures started following everything we were doing, to where they're seeing a live shot of what happened to our shed. I just thought it was just great that the technology was assisting us. Lower costs increase the margin between project expense structures and the value they deliver, and such as improving return on investment. And of course, that's going to be a positive to us. Efficiency gains typically lead to faster project completion, streamlined workflows, reduced bottlenecks, decision delays, better project scheduling and time management. Faster delivery means project benefits such as revenue generation, service improvements, and increasing net present value. Now, as you look at some of this, when we talk about revenue generation, let's go back to an artificial intelligence type of project. So if you're looking at artificial intelligence and bringing it into your organization, those of you in government, it can make a difference on efficiency. But if you're a private organization, it might make a difference on the products that you're offering. It might make a difference on optimizations that you're offering. And so you know as well as I do that the first few organizations that get out there with these type of products seem to be the ones who pull it all together. And then you're playing catch up if you're not out there in front. And that's what you're looking at on faster delivery. Can we be out here and develop something that is safe and that has high quality, but at the same time that's going to help optimize something for our customers? And then increase project value by higher quality output. Efficiency can influence quality by standardizing the best practices, reducing rework through early error detection, using feedback loops, continuous improvement such as Agile, Lean, and Six Sigma. Impact on value shows higher quality, such as reduced warranty and support costs, increased customer satisfaction, and leads to repeat business. So all of these build to that repetitiveness that we're talking about. So it's a higher quality, and then what happens with repeat business is because we believe we're working with a quality company. We believe they're doing something that's bringing value to us. And then the utilization also is improving resource utilization can lead to maximum productivity per team member, less idle time or over allocation, improved morale, lower burnout. Impact on value shows more output per unit of input and better team performance over time. And team performance, creating a high team performance is going to be huge because, once again, you're wanting your team to be able to make as many decisions as they possibly can without having to have management oversight. And the main reason for that is because we've got less management and more people. And so the ratio years and years ago used to be 1 supervisor to 8 people, and then it went to 1 in 15 in the 70s and early 80s, and it's something like about 1 in 70 now. And so when you start looking at those ratios, you need your team being able to be more mature in making some of those decisions. So you're fostering a culture of continuous improvement. So as you look at this, and everything goes in this direction for continuous improvement for projects, the principle of CI focuses on enhancing value delivery, minimizing waste over time. And so how continuous improvement is cultivated, Kaizen, which we know is continuous improvement in Japanese. And so employee empowerment, root cause analysis, the 5 whys or the fishbone, it's all the same thing. Retrospectives, which is the lessons learned on the Agile or the Scrum side, visual management and metrics, customer feedback integration. And so are we even measuring the right stuff? And so some of our measurements might, we measure time and money, but are there other things that need to be part of that? Quality is going to be a part of that. And we might be doing okay on the projects with time and money, but am I burning my people out and I'm churning my project team members? And so if that's the case, then we've got to start measuring something else in being able to keep those people long term. All right, so let me take a couple of minutes here, talk about a couple of things so that you're aware. So these are our webinars for the rest of the year. We have all of these scheduled. So next month, we're going to be talking about creating a high-performance team culture in Agile. And then September, we're talking about the role of knowledge transfer in project environments. In October, tailoring your project plan, how customization leads to success. And then November, empowerment, shifting authority and responsibility. And then December, we're going to talk about data-driven decisions. And so that tells you kind of what we're going to be doing for the rest of the year. And of course, if you're signed up for all of these, you're already good. But if not, and you want to sign up for just one of those, you can go to our website and find those out. We have one more mastermind group. If you're not familiar with this, these are people who are wanting to get their PMP. This is free. They will join this. It's listed as 5 days, but it's about an hour a day for 5 days. They start filling out their application. They start getting their education and their experience together so that they're ready to fill out that application when they do come to a boot camp. And so we've been doing these free. They've been very good. I do 2 Zoom calls to where people can ask any question. Plus there's little video snippets to help them kind of get it all together for them as for their application. We have 3 more virtual PMPs for the end of the year. We do it every other month, August, October, and December. And so that's what we'll have. All of these are virtual, instructor-led. I teach every one of these. And so these people will be in here from all over the world being part of this. And so if you want to be part of that, that'll be great. Also, if you're doing a mastermind group, just so you know, you get a huge discount for the PMP Bootcamp. And so all of that is listed in the mastermind group. You come to that free, but you get a discount. And then we also give one free person from the mastermind group the free boot camp. And so we do a drawing for every one of our boot camps so that they can somebody will get something free. And then if I can help you in any way or you have any questions or anything, don't hesitate to contact me or call me. And all of you've got our information and stuff. I'm supposed to tell you, I've got a note here. I'll be in trouble if I don't. For those of you who are wanting this for a video, you normally watch the video playback. Typically, you'll get that in a couple of hours. Kim's on vacation. And so she's her sons are working this summer, and so she's on vacation seeing her boys, and so she'll be back on Tuesday. So that video link will not come out until Tuesday. And so her statement was she didn't think I could do it. So I probably can't. So she's going to send it all out to you when she gets back. So if any of you are looking for that video link like you normally do in the afternoon, it won't happen until probably Tuesday when she gets back in. So let me pull us together here. We're out of time. So thank you so much for being part of this. I hope you have a great weekend and great finish as you finish out the summer with everyone. And so I'll see you back here next month. Okay. Bye, guys. See y'all later. Y'all have a wonderful weekend and everything. Bye, everyone.